Hi, I recently ran a little survey among different Fujifilm photographer groups to find out which one prime lens they would keep if they could only keep one lens. And surprisingly so, or not, the one that came up the most is the 35mm and the f1.4 version to be precise. So is this the best Fujifilm prime lens in the lineup? Let's find out. First thing, the release date. The f1.4 version is the first one and it came out in 2012 versus the f2 version that came out in 2015. The biggest difference obviously is the aperture, because the maximum aperture of this lens is f1.4 versus f2, so you're gaining a whopping one stop of light. The other big advantage of the f1.4 version is the depth of field, which will be a little bit shallower over the f2 version. And I personally like the organic depth of field that this f1.4 version produces over the f2 version. Now, one major advantage in taking the f2 version is obviously the compact size of it, the fact that it is light and it is small compared to the bigger sister. So having this on your camera, if you're someone who travels a lot, is a big advantage, also because this one has weather resistance, which will help you when there is dusty and or humid environments, paired obviously with a weather resistant compatible body such as an XT camera or an X Pro camera, versus this one that doesn't have that advantage. In terms of autofocus, let's mention that, let's talk about it. The f1.4 version is slower than the f2 version in terms of autofocusing speed. Now personally, and we're being honest here, I do not notice such a big difference between these two lenses when I'm going out and shoot in real life. Obviously on specs, on paper, and if you do specific tests to find out if this one is faster than the other one, sure, you will see that it's faster, but in real life, do you actually need that difference in autofocus? The other thing is, when you're shooting video, you want something a little bit more silent, such as the f2 version, and something that focuses a little bit faster. So for video, I think that the point goes to the f2 version. One minor detail, I say minor because it is actually important to me, is the lens cap. The lens cap of the f1.4 version is a rectangular shape lens cap. It's made of rubber, plastic, and it is not nearly as good as the f2 version. That has this clip-on lens cap that will not go anywhere. So when you put the f1.4 version in your bag, hands down, every time I will find the cap in the bag, it will not stay on. So it's almost practically useless. In terms of price, the f1.4 version is priced around $600 versus the f2 version, which costs around $400 at B&H currently. There's a difference of $200. I believe this is because you get an extra stop of light on this one, and the build quality of the hood, for example, is a bit better than this one. But to be fair, these are correctly priced, I think. So this is a 50mm equivalent on full frame cameras. Now it sits perfectly between the 23mm f2 or f1.4 and the 56 f1.2 or the 50 f1 or f2. So it's basically a focal length that sits in between, that is very close to these two focal lengths. To me, it is important to have the 23 on one of my cameras and the 56 on the other camera when I shoot weddings. This is something I always do and I will keep doing. If you could choose only one lens, this one sits right in the middle, so you could still do street photography with a 35mm and you can still shoot portraits because you still have a pretty good compression. So if you ask me, this focal length does not replace my 23 or my 56. But if I could only choose one, or if you light package, you're traveling, you want to use only one camera with one lens, you could definitely go with the 35 f1.4 or f2. This is a great focal length right in the middle here. So I decided to shoot a few sample shots. These were shot in my backyard in the garden, and they show you a little bit how the depth of field compares between the f1.4 and the f2 version. I tried to be as consistent as possible on this very review compared to another one that I did in the past for the 23mm if I don't air. This time I used the same exact body, an XT3. That way you have a very similar rendering in the end, showing you the differences and the comparison between these two. Here they are. One thing that people and I myself like to see a lot in this type of video is sample shots. So I'm gonna show you a bunch of shots. To be honest and fair, the f2 version is not a version that I used a lot. In fact, I sold it in the past, but I have a few shots that I shot in Los Angeles a few years ago. And the f1.4 version, I shot some more recent shots of a photo shoot. You will see that these images are not that shallow in terms of depth of field. The reason is because when I shoot, for example, my son cooking with all the lemons and everything on the table, you will see, you do want to see that. You don't want to have it all, you know, shallow and see him only on the photo. So I shot that at around 2.8 or f3.2, around there. So it's not fully open. So after using this focal length for a while now, I can tell you that I actually like it a lot, and I understand that a lot of photographers like the 35mm focal length a lot. The other day, you can check on my channel, I made a video with all the prime lenses from Fuji on this very table. And while it is great to have all these prime lenses and everyone serve a purpose, that you do real estate, be it that you do photo shoots in studio, outdoor, that you shoot, anything, landscape, they all serve a very specific purpose. But I think the 35mm is a very sweet spot in the lineup, and it sits right in the middle, I think, among all these lenses. So if you're considering to buy the f2 or the f1.4 version, you need to think to yourself, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to travel? Are you going to use it indoor, outdoor, in studio? Do you need the weather resistance? Do you actually need that extra stop of light? Does it make a difference? So there's a lot of little points like that that I mentioned in my video just before. So you can go through, write them down, see which one is better for you, and based on that, choose one of these two. They're both Fujifilm lenses. They're both amazing. They both serve a great purpose. And I think you can go wrong with this focal length, honestly. So let me know, what are your views? Write it down in the comments below. Which lenses do you use? Do you have a favorite lens? Is this one of your favorite lenses? I would like to know that. Until then, take care, keep shooting, and like always, I'll see you in my next video. Cheers.